thought no further than the strange custom of having your children wear masks and go out begging for candy. It was the start of the year in our old Celtic lands, and we'd be waiting in our houses of wattles and clay. The barriers would be down, you see, between the real and the unreal. And the dead might be looking in to sit by our fires of turf. Halloween. The festival of Samhain. The last great one took place 3,000 years ago when the hills ran red with the blood of animals and children. Sacrifices. They're part of our world. Our craft. Witchcraft. To us, it was a way of controlling our environment. It's not so different now. It's time again. In the end, we don't decide these things, you know. The planets do. They're in alignment, and it's time again. The world's going to change tonight, Doctor. I'm glad you'll be able to watch it. And happy Halloween.
Is imagination simply contained in the mind, or does it tap into an unseen world with messages waiting to be told? There is a place where legends cross over into our world, where strange visions and whispers beckon, and superstition takes hold. Step into the Black Cat's shadow.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Black Cat Shadow, and this is episode 13, and happy Halloween. This is our Halloween episode, and in this episode we're going to be talking about Halloween and its origins and traditions, and some creepy urban legends that are related to Halloween, and also talking about the movie Hellions from 2015. I am one of your hosts, Andy, podcasting from Kansas City, Missouri. And my other host joining me today is Dakota. How's it going, Dakota?
I'm doing well. I'm pretty excited about our Halloween episode. Halloween is my holiday. It's the number one holiday for me. Get to dress up, do makeup. I mean, I told you about my Halloween makeup. I'm getting ready to post it up on Horror Mino. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. Hopefully I'll have it up by the end of the day today. So. Oh
yeah, cool. Looking forward to that. Definitely. So to start off with, we wanted to dive right into the holiday of Halloween, and Dakota, I think you've got some research that you did into the origins of Halloween, so I'll let you go ahead and take the lead on that.
Yeah, with Halloween, what we know is Halloween actually started as a holiday that the Gaels celebrated, which are the ancient, like what we'd consider like the ancient people from like Scotland and Ireland. Part of that kind of went into the Celtic religions too, like the paganism. Samhain is the holiday. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. It's like Samhain in Gaelic, which I think that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Basically, it means the darker half of the year. So when we're going from autumn into winter, some of the different rituals that we kind of go through with that kind of changed when the Christians decided to change the holiday, try to make it more of a holy time. They used to leave food and wine out for the spirits that were crossing over, because during this time, it's when the veil between life and death is the most thin. mean, we talked about like spirits crossing over before and kind of being in between life and death. But during Halloween or Samhain, it's more of a popular time because of that veil being so thin.
Yeah, and this time of year, for me especially, ever since I was a kid, it's always had the kind of mystery to it, or magic. You just feel like magic could actually happen this time of year. I don't know. I guess you have more superstitions too, and you just have a lot of really fun traditions. And there's some interesting origins to like some of the traditions that we do. Like bobbing for apples, even. And that's looks like that came from the combination of the Roman celebrations and the along with the Celtic celebrations, kind of joining those two together. There's a Roman deity called Pomona, and she was the goddess of fruit and trees, and her symbol is the apple. So I think that's why they incorporated the bobbing for apples in their celebrations there. And then you got like active wearing costumes, and the Celts, back when they back in the original days, the costumes they wore were like animal heads and skins. And, a lot of things that they would do would be like building huge sacred bonfires, and they would burn crops and even like sacrifice some animals. And they would try to make predictions on the future during this time too. And those predictions would kind of give them comfort during the winter months. And from the sacred bonfire that they had, they would take a torch from the bonfire and light the hearths in each of their homes, so that fire would stay burning all winter and protect them during the winter time. And like Dakota was saying, they had this real fear of these evil spirits being out and about and destroying crops and just causing general trouble. So they would wear masks to kind of trick the spirits into thinking that they were actually ghosts themselves. So so there was a Celtic belief, that if you left the house after dark, you would wear a mask, and then that would give you protection from the spirits, because they would think you're a ghost too. And also, like we're looking at trick or treating. That actually came from the All Souls Day parade in England, so that's kind of where some of the church's influence came in. The poor would beg for food, and they were given pastries called soul cakes, and in return, they would pray for the family's dead relatives that gave them the food. And the church used that practice to replace the old practice of leaving food and wine out for roaming spirits, which had a name. The name of this practice was called going a souling. And the name Halloween has an interesting origin. It came from the church's attempt to replace the so-called heathen holiday with a church holy day. And so November 1st was named All Saints Day, which is also known as All Hallows or All Hallowmas. And so the night before, which is the traditional night of the Celtic celebrations, that came to be known as All Hallows Eve, or Halloween eventually. So and then also you have this kind of a symbol for Halloween, and part of the reason why I took the name. You have black cats, and they are kind of associated with evil, kind of unfairly. But the belief came from the Middle Ages when you had like this fear of witches, and the witches were believed to actually have the ability to change into animals, and particularly like cats. They would turn into these animals to avoid being detected by people that may be witch hunters or something like that. I guess if they saw a cat around in the area where there was witch activities going on, that they would think that the cat was actually a witch in disguise. So those are some of the origins of Halloween, some of the traditions that we found that were interesting, that we wanted to kind of look into and figure out what the inspiration was for those. So our previous several episodes have been our Horror 101 series, and so we wrapped that up last episode with our Paranormal Horror 101 episodes. So if you haven't checked those out, they're a good series to listen to if you are new to horror, If you're somebody that's just starting to like horror and is curious about all the different types of horror movies, it's definitely a series to check out and get a good foundation for horror. So in this episode, we want to kind of get back to our format that we had, which is our Mythos Macabre episode. And what that is basically we take a horror movie, something that has a really cool mythology to it, a really interesting story, and we look at the inspiration behind that story. We look at everything from folklore to urban legends to even in some cases true crime, and see if there's any like parallels there. See if we can find anything that could have inspired the story in the movie. And so today we're talking about the movie called Hellions from 2015, and the possible inspirations behind that. Hellions was originally released on January 25th, 2015, and for the most part, there's only a couple. There's kind of a handful of actors in it. There's actually only one that I recognize, which was Robert Patrick. And if you've seen Terminator 2, he is the T-1000. And also he was in the X-Files as Agent Doggett. So I was really excited to see his name attached to this. And then also you have the main star, the young lady that the story revolves around. And her name is Chloe Rose. And I actually don't really recognize her from anything else. The movie was directed by Bruce McDonald, who also directed Pontypool from 2008, which is a pretty good horror movie. It's kind of a different take on, I guess, zombies. Not really zombies, but maybe more like Infected. It's a different take on the Infected movie, for sure. And this movie was written by Pascal Trottier. I think that's how you pronounce it. And he also wrote The Colony from 2013 and A Christmas Horror Story in 2015, which I need to check. I've seen the Colony, which I thought was pretty good, and I still need to see A Christmas Horror Story. Let's see. Have you seen either one of those, Dakota?
No, actually, I haven't. Probably need to check them out though.
Yeah, the Colony was like a kind of a cool, like, I don't know if I would call it sci-fi horror, but it kind of takes place in the future. It's like a post-apocalyptic type setting, and you have these people that are staying underground. You have these colonies that are like the last remnants of humanity staying underground, and they anyway, so they end up losing contact with one of their other colonies. So this group of people have to go check it out, see what's happening, and it turns out there's this group of cannibals that are just like, going from colony to colony, like eating people, and it's pretty cool. The Christmas Horror Story, I actually haven't seen that one yet, but it looks like an interesting Christmassy horror movie. So getting back to Hellions, basically, it's got a pretty simple story. It's about this young lady. She's like 17 years old, and she's just kind of doing her normal teenage thing. Her and her boyfriend are hanging out and stuff, and then she has to go to the doctor because she's feeling kind of sick, and she finds out she's pregnant. And so, naturally it comes as quite a shock to her, and she's trying to figure out how she's going to tell her boyfriend and how she's going to tell her mom. She lives with just her mom and her younger brother. So she's trying to figure out how to tell her mom, and so this movie takes place on Halloween night, and so she is like waiting for her boyfriend to pick her up. She's at home alone. Her mother and younger brother have went out trick-or-treating. So she's at home by herself, and she hears a knock at the front door. She's assuming it's just trick-or-treaters coming, so she grabs a bowl of candy, goes to the front door. And here we have what appears to be a little kid, but they're dressed really freaky in like this scarecrow costume. And so, she gives them candy, tells them to go away. And that's kind of what starts it off, and it just builds from there. There's like these group of these what look like little kids in these really creepy Halloween costumes that are just like surrounding the house and terrorizing her. And she has to find a way to get help and survive and not let them into the house. So I would say it's kind of like a home invasion type movie, with kind of a combination of a creepy kid movie. And I have to say this movie had a really, really great Halloween feel to it. The town this is set in, they grow pumpkins, so Halloween is kind of like their main source of income. It's their kind of what keeps them going. And there's a lot of atmosphere to this movie. There's a lot of focus on the Halloween decorations, and the score is really kind of creepy. And I really like it. I think it adds to the effect of the movie a lot. And, this movie is visually, very visually nice to look at. It's just inaudibly, stunning. And it's definitely more of an artsy movie, because you have like kind of a weird lighting like part way through the movie. The lighting switches to like this weird like pinkish tint, and it's supposed to be because of the blood moon. There is a blood moon on this Halloween night, and so I think that's kind of where that comes from. But it just adds a kind of unreal feeling to the movie, kind of a surreal quality to it, and it really reminds me of like 70s horror, where there was more psychedelic, and they have weird cut scenes and kind of disorienting camera shots, camera angles. And I thought the kids' costumes were really scary. They really remind me of those vintage Halloween costumes that you see in pictures online, like the ones from like the 20s or whatever, that are kind of unintentionally scary, but they're just really creepy to look at. And this is one of those movies that's really open for interpretation. You can see this movie as being, it's just open for interpretation. It's not really clear what actually happened, but I really thought it was entertaining. I would say it's definitely worth a watch. And so, Dakota, what's your thoughts on Hellions?
For me, the way Hellions works, it's more of a starter movie for people getting into horror. It is a B movie in my opinion, just because it wasn't so full. It wasn't like chock full of actors. It wasn't a blockbuster movie, but with the actors, like Chloe Rose, I did a little bit more digging into her. She was actually off of Degrassi, The Next Generation. That's a show that like we grew up watching. My generation at least.
Okay.
And Rossif Sutherland is the son of Donald Sutherland. Everybody knows him as President Snow from the Hunger Games series, for like the younger generation, obviously. But
oh yeah.
So the movie for me, it kind of struck me on a kind of more of like a psychological level, just because of the taunting of the girl in the movie. These creatures, or Hellions, or whatever you want to call them, were taunting her and telling her, "We're going to take your baby. We're going to take your baby." And I think actually I did a little bit more research into this. It's actually a curse. It happens on the blood moon. Not a really big legend. It's never been any actual accounts of it. It's just something that kind of like stuck out to me, was that there is a legend of children that will come and take your unborn child if you're like a child out of wedlock, or a child that was or an illegitimate child.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering if there was actually because I was kind of trying to look up like urban legends or any kind of folklore surrounding the blood moon, and I couldn't really find a whole lot myself. I just found a lot of like more like religious type stuff, and so that's cool that you found that. Yeah, they were talking about like there's like runes and stuff that those creepy kids were carving, and so that kind of like they're like talking about like the harvest, and so it was definitely one of those movies that it presented an interesting story, but it doesn't give you all the answers, so it kind of leaves you room to explore it further, which I definitely enjoyed that.
Well, I think what it really did well was actually kind of go back to the roots of Halloween, like the creepy costumes, trying to ward away other spirits. But you're talking about the runes, like these kids carving runes. That goes back to the old religion of Samhain, not religion, but the old holiday. So I think it really kind of brings out the old feel of Halloween.
Yeah, it definitely does. It gives a nod back to those old traditions. And so yeah, it's a really fascinating movie, and I would say, it's streaming right now on Netflix. So if you have a Netflix subscription, I would say check it out, definitely. And I did like Robert Patrick, and I thought he was going to be more of a comedic kind of type character, because at the very beginning he kind of has this one-liner types dialogue, and I was like, oh, I would have been fine with him having a bunch of one-liners, but he really didn't. He played it pretty straight throughout the whole movie. And the movie was played straight. It wasn't like a comedy or anything like that. So yeah, I would say definitely check that out. And, while we're on the topic of creepy kids, one of the urban legends that kind of parallels that is the urban legend of black-eyed kids. Kind of a short rundown of like a typical account, like a sighting of these. It would be like if somebody's at home, just mind their own business, and they hear a knock on the front door, and so they go and answer it, and there's like these. Usually, there's like 2 or 3 kids, and they're just wearing like maybe normal clothes. Maybe they're baggy or a little bit shabby or something, and they're wearing like hoodies that are kind of covering their faces, and the person will say, "What do you need help, or do you need something?" The kids will be like, basically ask them to let them in their house. Like, can we come in? We're lost. We need to use your phone. We need to come in, and things like that. And then the person will usually notice that their eyes are all black. They have no whites to their eyes at all, and it's just really creepy. And so kind of how the urban legend goes, or the accounts go, is like you're not supposed to let them in at all because something bad will happen if you let them in. Or and some other accounts are they will ask people for rides, and you're not supposed to let them in your car at all. And so it's really kind of unnerving and just kind of creepy and mysterious. And I found an interesting account on Reddit that I wanted to read off here. So it starts out, it says, "This really freaked me out. Yesterday I noticed my neighbor hadn't put out all his Halloween decorations, lights, etc. The past 2 years I've lived next to him, he's gone all out for Halloween. I don't know him well, he's younger, single, but I know he likes kids, but not in a creepy way. His brother and sister-in-law and their kids are always visiting him, and he plays with his 3 young nieces and nephews out in the yard. So anyway, I got home from work and was walking up the driveway, and I saw him outside and said something like, 'Hey man, you better get your Halloween stuff up or that house up the street is going to beat you for best decorations.' He kind of smiles sheepishly and says that he's actually going to keep his house dark this year and just put candy out. I asked if he was going out of town, but he said no. Something happened last year that really scared him. So now I was concerned for my own safety if some weirdos were coming around our neighborhood, which is a pretty safe neighborhood with tons of young families living here. So I asked him what happened. He said last year he had his brother's family over so they could trick-or-treat in the neighborhood, since they live in an apartment complex that doesn't do much for Halloween. He had a bunch of kids come to the door like always. His family took off around 10:30, and there were only a few older trick-or-treaters, but by 11:30 they were pretty much done. So he was inside watching TV, and the doorbell rings. He grabs the candy bowl and heads over, noticing that it's a little past midnight, and that's pretty rude for trick-or-treaters to still be out. But he notices he hasn't turned off his decorations yet, so his house is still a beacon in the night. He swings the door open and is about to yell "boo" or something to freak him out, but stops dead when he sees the kids at the door. He said one was probably around 13 or 14, and the other around 16 or 17, and they were both boys. They weren't dressed up, but he remembers the older one was wearing a flannel checkered shirt. He was immediately overcome with uneasiness, like opening the door was a huge mistake. They just stared at him, and he noticed that they had really big irises and dilated pupils. He couldn't even see the whites of their eyes, so he figured that they were contact lenses. He was frozen there holding the candy bowl, like he couldn't slam the door in their face as much as he wanted to. So he nervously tried to smile at them, hoping they would break character and ask for candy or something. The younger one said they had gotten lost and needed to come in and use his phone. That was when he closed the door more than halfway on them and said, "No, sorry." And the older one said something like, "Can we just wait in your house until our parents come get us?" But by then he was convinced that his life was in danger and these kids must be high on something or intending to rob him, and he just kept mumbling, "No, sorry, good night," as he inched the door closed and locked it. He told me he was so scared at that point that they were going to try to break in through one of his windows or something, but he looked through the peephole and they had turned to leave. He watched TV with the volume really low so he could hear any sounds at all, and he said he stayed up till like 5 a.m. because he was too scared to go to bed and drop his guard. So the whole time he's telling me this, I'm thinking, oh my God, this sounds so familiar, just like the Black-Eyed Kids urban legend. Then I thought, maybe this dude is trying to scare me because after all, he does have the Halloween spirit. So I'm looking at him incredulously, but not trying to seem too gullible. So I'm like, man, that is really crazy. Sounds like the Black-Eyed Kids. He just looks at me blankly. He said, the what? Is that a movie or something? I said no, but told him to go look it up online. Like an hour later, I get a knock on my door, and admittedly almost jump out of my skin, thinking it's a demon child. It was my neighbor, and his eyes are freaking huge. He swears to me up and down that he had never heard of the Black-Eyed Kids before, and it's so similar to what happened to him. So we talked a while longer, and I told him that quite a few people probably know about that urban legend. It's possible it was just teenagers with black contacts trying to freak people out on Halloween, which would be genius, by the way. But he said the fear he felt was so primal and came over him the second you opened the door for them. So that's the story that I found on Reddit, which is pretty creepy. But Dakota, you've actually got a personal account. You've actually had a personal experience with these Black-Eyed Kids. So I thought it would be really creepy, if you're comfortable, to share that with our listeners as well.
Oh yeah, it's fine. I mean, I've said before, some of the best horror is the horror that relates to you the most. And I mean, this story it's not like a fully in-depth story. It's really just something that's happened and that I quickly try to shut it out of my mind, but it always keeps coming up just because I keep seeing it all around. But see, I was working about 2 or 3 years ago, and so I would get off early in the morning, probably about 2:30 in the morning, or 2:30, 3 o'clock, I don't know. But I was walking to my car, and I saw these 2 little girls approach me. I'm like, one's like 13, the other one's like a little bit younger, it looks like. But I'm like, what the hell's going on here? So like, are you guys okay? You shouldn't be out this late at night. Well, she comes up to me, and she says, "Can you give us a ride?" I'm like, no. Do you need to call somebody? And she goes, "No, but I need a ride. Like, we need to go somewhere." I'm like, "Okay, I can't give you a ride. I'm sorry." And it kept going and going and going. And I just kept getting uneasy about it. I'm like, "I'm sorry." And I turn around to get into my car. And as I turn around to look back, they were gone. And it was literally just like 5 seconds. It's not enough time for somebody to even run away. You'd still see them. So, I mean, not like fully in depth where it was like I knew what was going on until about a couple weeks later. I looked it up. And I found all these urban legends about these Black-Eyed Kids running around scaring people. I mean, I haven't heard anything like too serious about it, like people dying for letting these kids in or people getting sick or getting hurt. But it is freaky.
Yeah. So did you notice their eyes were black when you were talking to them?
I felt uneasy, and when I feel uneasy, I get really nervous. So I didn't really notice. But I mean, if I had to guess, that's what they were, because I mean, there's no way they could have escaped that quick.
Sure. Yeah. You would have seen somebody, even if they ran away. You would have seen them running away at that point. When you actually you hear these urban legends, like, yeah, okay, but when you actually talk to somebody that's experiencing stuff, it definitely makes it more real, and I think that there's just some weird things that happen that just can't be explained, and so yeah, I definitely find it interesting, and but scary at the same time. I definitely would not want to run into something like that in the middle of the night. So we thought that would fit in well with the Halloween season, with the Halloween episode. So we hope you guys enjoyed that. And we wanted to bring back a horror prediction segment that we had done a few episodes back. So this segment, we want to talk about a movie coming up called Split. And so basically for our horror predictions, what that means is we're going to look at a trailer. We look at a trailer for an upcoming horror movie, and we say if it's going to be good or not. And then we try to predict if it's going to be good or not. Anyway, it's just something fun to do. So we were looking at this movie called Split, and it's actually from M. Night Shyamalan. And watching this trailer, it looks like it's going to be pretty good. It looks like it's going to be a good psychological horror movie, kind of like a good like really suspenseful. It's got James McAvoy in it, which he's a good actor, and also the girl from The Witch, Anya Taylor-Joy, I think is her name. So I know that it's probably going to be good, just from the cast. And from what people are saying about The Visit, it sounds like M. Night Shyamalan is kind of getting back to form, kind of making some better movies than he had in the past, which I've always been a fan, And so, Dakota, what do you think about Split?
I think it's really going to touch well on the psychological horror aspect. It's kind of built like a kidnapping movie or a home invasion movie. Just from watching the few minutes, like the very first few seconds of the trailer, where you see him get in the car and like I don't know if he was macing the girls or he was trying to knock them out or something, but it was almost like you could tell something was wrong. Like just looking at his face, I mean, it looked like there was something wrong mentally, not like he was just doing it to do it. But going into it a little bit, I watched it, paid attention a little bit more. I mean, he obviously has split personalities. We saw in the trailer he has this little kid demeanor where he talks with a lisp and he's very very childlike, and then he has one that's a mother figure, which means this kind of fits in with my novel a little bit. I was telling you about my character in my novel. The character has split personalities also, and he has different kinds of personalities for every different kind of person. But in this, he's trying to unlock 100% of his brain. I mean, movies that came out in the past, like Lucy, not a horror movie, but a good example of that, that humans could potentially use 100% of their brain. We don't know what's going to happen. A lady said that potentially you can unlock a beast, some sort of creature in his mind.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that personality probably makes his way out before the end of the movie, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, it definitely looks like a suspenseful movie. I'm looking forward to checking it out. And so that's pretty much going to wrap up our Halloween episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can find us on social media. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @BlackCatPodcast. And if you'd like to send us an email, just to say hi or to give us suggestions on movies you'd like us to cover, you can send us an email it's blackcatpodcast@gmail.com. And we're also on Horror Amino as well. And so for the month of October, we've been doing weekly episodes. So for here on out, we're going to go back to our bi-weekly schedule and go back to our Mythos, Macabre, and other movie review type formats. So, Dakota, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, guys, reach out to me on Horror Amino. Just Rainstorm01, capital RAIYN Storm01. Find me on there. I haven't been very active due to my writing, but I'm actually gonna here in about probably a couple hours, I'm gonna post pictures of me for my Halloween costume. I'll be looking for some of my other pictures. I'm actually gonna do some monster makeups, like Hollywood makeups, post them on Horror Amino, and hopefully in the future I'm gonna do some YouTube videos, some like tutorials of how to do like basic special effects makeup. You'll see one example of it on Horror Amino. So
cool, man. That sounds exciting. Definitely looking forward to that. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a cool series there. We'll see you guys on the next episode, and not sure what we're gonna do yet, but we'll probably do another Mythos Macabre to start off November. So remember, guys, take a closer look at the world around you, and you may just find that it's stranger and more mysterious than you thought, especially in the Black Cat Shadow.